Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to Discussing Tabletop for March 3rd, 2018. The first of our Discussing Tabletops in March. Of course, this is episode 68. Welcome once again to my of course, guess, which, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong spot. We can play. Yeah. Edit soon. Yeah, okay, whoops. Accidental. Put you in Joe's spot. Anyway, we have Wyrm with Joe is unable to join us. If people were following what happened to me yesterday with my stream being cut, my morning stream, you'll know I had weather we had snow, and he's close enough that he also got the snow. We got the East Coasters, and he lost power. I didn't. So off with no power and have him. But he sends his regards. You know, we'll be near geeking out without him. So. Anyway, so we have a great docket for you today, which let me chat because I'm remembering to now. Hey, look at that there. First off, we're going to talk Pathfinder inner taverns and in general as a kind of trope that you have in RPGs. I want to talk about Star Wars: Dawn of Rebellion because it's a very much so period piece in RPGs, and talk about using time and period in RPGs. Dark Crystal, the board game, came out. I want to talk about that because I like Dark Crystal, and I mean that's a good enough reason. Castell, the board game, which is a game about stacking, but it has more than your average kind of. I wouldn't call it like Jenga mechanic. There's more to it, so we'll talk all about that. Then I want to talk about Achtung Cthulhu Code of Honor because it's a War II Cthulhu horror board game RPG, and taking it in a very interesting direction, as rather than focus on the military aspect, which it seems a lot of the adventures do, it's focusing on more spy work, which is kind of interesting. And then, of course, we have our normal segments, which we have every week, the Kickstarter Korner, where we let you know about interesting Kickstarters we found online, our Week in Tabletop, where we talk about, well, just that, our week in the tabletop world. And then, of course, Consult the Table, where you, the audience, can ask us any kind of questions that you want, anything that you want us to look into, help you out with, all that kind of stuff. From anything from RPGs, CCGs, whatever it is that you need, you can consult us there. All right, why don't we, of course, dive in with the first one here, which is the Pathfinder has released Inner Sea Taverns. So, just on the surface, to talk about what the thing that they released is, they've put together 6 basically fully fleshed out taverns that you can use in your games across Golarion. They have full map pages, stat blocks for, you know, things like proprietors, any kind of locals that might be in there, some history of it, various clientele that might be in there. And they do have some specialized rules for things like bar fights and pub games that you might want to throw into this pub or any pub. So the thing about this that I kind of wanted to dive into is that as much as it is like a trope, in most fantasy games, you're usually going to find yourself in a tavern at some point in time. Like a lot of these, you find yourself at the tavern at the beginning of the adventure. Oh, we're in a tavern. It's the start of the adventure. Or you end up in a tavern. I mean, not to say that you couldn't have an adventure without it. No, that is possible. I've had adventures where you don't really go to taverns, only like maybe once, maybe twice. But the fact is, it's such an easy way to like introduce people together, or to, you know, it's a place that information would be spread. So I like that they've detailed more famous ones in Pathfinder. That's nice. But I guess giving more interesting ideas about how you can design a tavern might not be a bad idea. Because like, I have that quintessential tavern idea in my head, and not that that's a bad thing, but I think that getting away from that might not be bad, you know?
Yeah. I personally hate the inn/tavern thing, how they're always combined when in reality they never are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean... Yeah, I agree on that one, that it's like, you didn't really get them together, but for some reason they always are together.
Like, I'm okay with the idea in some of these fantasy worlds that is standard, but I don't like the concept that it is realistically standard, because it's like, no, inns are a place to sleep, bars are a place to drink. Mm-hmm. Generally, they are not together.
Yeah. Granted, you could have a couple exceptions, but those are more exceptions.
Of
where
course.
it seems like in our fantasy games, they're always connected. You know,
Yeah.
you could. The thing is, maybe they'd be next door to each other. It might be more realistic. You know that they might be connected because of business, but it might not be that they're the same thing, because that's just it just doesn't work as well. I agree.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, otherwise, it's like I'm fine with the idea. I even use it. I've used it. I'm using it in Bastion Frontier. It's like, but I'm not making it always the case. As you guys were like wondering what was going on in Midreach, I was like, yeah, this is just an inn.
Yeah.
It's an inn/bunkhouse, not an inn/tavern.
And not everywhere has a tavern to drink. Granted, you probably in most towns will have some place to drink, but no, I mean, I think that it's also it's less that most places that would be a tavern or eating establishment would be an inn, more that they might have a place to sleep, but it'd be like, oh, you could go sleep in the loft we have outside next to, our, like, something to do with our farming, for farmers, something like that, outside.
Oh yeah, that is
the chicken coop. We have a loft.
Yeah, that's the thing. Historically, generally, like you hear of like these people who are travelers, whether they're preachers or blah blah blah. In actual history, travelers would often just stay, like knock on a person's door and say, "Hey, can I stay here for the night?" and exchange basically entertainment of stories of travel or whatever, for food and board for the night. Sometimes even a little bit of coin, or gold or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like that's traditionally how it worked. There were only really inns in large establishments or in large established cities.
Yeah. You didn't get the kind of same things. Like, it's very interesting that it's become very trope-ish, and especially in those fantasy games, and like even in small villages it ends up that weird kind of way. And I think it is sort of the fact that they've become like the go-to, we'll meet with people, we'll start adventures place is the tavern/inn, and so they kind of merge together,
Well, it's more like, I mean, in fantasy, for characters, it's just so often you need a place to stay, and taverns are the place you go for information. And so it's almost out of convenience, GMs and people and like these kind of things combine them.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that has driven it into the direction it's definitely gone. Convenience. Which I understand, and it's like, acceptable, but there certainly should be a separation at some point in time, definitely. At least more realistically.
Think it should be, I mean, if you want to make things a little bit more interesting, it just shouldn't always be together.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, I'm not sure if all these places are also inns. Like they only give us basically some information on 4 of the 6 that they have in there. That they have like a treetop wine bar in an elven nation. That's cool. Or a rough and tumble pirate bar. Underground speakeasy, and an open air gambling hall. Those all seem like very interesting and different types of caverns. So that's one of those other things, is like, out of those 4, the pirate place seems more like every bar I usually like imagine and or use in most RPGs when I use or like when I'm running it when I use a bar. Because I really actually, in more modern times, haven't used much bars, I have to say. Since I like really, in like the last probably 3 or 4 years, I think there's only like 1 bar I've really used for any period of time in a game, personally.
Yeah, one of the things I find a little bit interesting is it mentions one of them is a speakeasy, which is kind of fun, because a speakeasy is basically in a place where alcohol isn't allowed. It's a secret place to go for alcohol.
Yes.
It's kind of like, that one sounds like it probably wouldn't be necessarily a inn.
I don't think
that sounds kind of dumb. Well,
like,
actually, no. If anything, that one actually could be an inn. It's an in front.
Yeah.
Inn is a front.
Yeah, and like out of all of these, the only one I think might have an inn connected to it might be something like the Formal Maid, the pirate one, because it's at port, and maybe they want to also grab like some of like the travelers that are coming in from port. Not only are you getting the drinks, you might stay up top.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one I could see maybe having a couple of rooms, but then again, it's like that's I think probably would be again better than like it's a full-blown inn. It might be like, well, we have a couple of rooms just in case we need like have some people stay or something.
Yeah.
Or they might be expensive or something. I don't know.
I do want to say though, I love the cover of this book because it basically shows this barbarian fighting a like dinosaur skeleton with people running and one person sitting behind a table drinking their beer.
It's like not again.
Like, it's like a tipped over table. They're like behind it, just well.
It's the usual, It's the dinosaur bursts in. It's like interrupted my drink. But no, I think that's another thing that I do like with books like this, that we're getting variety, as I was saying, that we're looking at the tavern and making a difference between it. Because what kind of adventures are your people going to have in the sophisticated tabletop wine bar in an elven nation? What kind of experience is that going to be? That's going to be totally different than your like pirate bar. So it's going to be like, we don't see enough of that kind of super variety when it comes to like tavern places either. And I think it's not a laziness. It's just that most of us kind of imagine the vaguely, pirate bar, but maybe with less fighting, as the location of most bars. It's kind of like a little bit seedy. You got your tables, a couple like a bar to pull up to, tough looking guy behind the as a keep, as serving drinks. But
yeah, and that's like one thing where it's like I really should like I personally am like okay, it's like I kind of am using all these tropes because I just don't want to bother as a GM because I have a hard enough time keeping track of the plot. I'm not a very organized GM as of right now. I'm starting to learn what I need and don't need because that's the thing is like this is literally the third full campaign I've ever run.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think people realize Bastion Frontier is I've not GM'd a lot.
I think for me it's that my traditional GM style is high big planning. Only lately have I begun to like develop very good impromptu skills where I can improvise a lot better. That's something that in the last couple of years I've developed more. So the thing is, still, if I have like my plot written out, some basic things, if I have them going to a tavern, I'm probably maybe only going to put a couple words about it. And most of the details about it will probably be improvised to what I know, which is traditional kind of, bar type area.
Yeah. Although for me, it's funny because I'm kind of weird because I really like maps, but I'm much better impromptu. Mm-hmm. So, like, if I didn't use maps, I would probably have no trouble GMing. But a lot of the problem I have is that, like, no, I kind of know where you're going. I want a map for this location, so I have to plan out certain things. Such as like where people are going to be, where blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's what I spend most of my time doing. Because it's like, otherwise it's like, I could probably just like grab a couple of sheets and be like, okay, these guys are here, and here's the layout.
I can definitely dive into that planning phase a lot more than I need to. I understand completely where you're like, this goes here, that goes there, this goes there. It still tries to grab me sometimes, and I try my best to like not dive into it because I know it eats up too much of my time. But
and the reason I like maps is because I like the tactical aspect of combat.
Oh yeah,
and so it's much better if you know where things are. Because when you're just visualizing things, you're like, well, I don't entirely know what I can do, so I'm just going to walk up and hit them.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those things about between the visualization and maps. And I think there's like For me, I feel like there's encounters where you need the maps, and sometimes you just don't.
Oh yeah, I don't use them all the time if you haven't noticed, especially areas where you're more familiar, like in that tavern when they attacked you. I didn't bring out the tavern map because you guys could probably figure it's just she attacked you at the doorway,
Yeah. Definitely I think the good thing about this book is really just trying to turn around what you're thinking about, your bars and your taverns and stuff, and giving some suggestions for something different. And I think that's why I would definitely recommend checking it out, if you can. If you want something a little different from your general taverns. That's cool. All right, so that's the Inner Sea Taverns. It's available now from Paizo in print or PDF if you need it. So, all right. Let's move on, though. I want to talk about Star Wars Dawn of Rebellion. So, Fantasy Flight has their Star Wars system, which I've only seen a little bit of it played. Don't ask me actually how to play it fully. Watching some people is different than actually doing it. But effectively,
I didn't know this was a thing till today.
I've liked what I've seen of it. Now, the thing is, they actually have 3 different campaign settings. Edge of the Empire, which is supposed to be more the Galactic Rim, more smugglers, stuff like that. Age of Rebellion, which is supposed to focus more on being part of the Rebel Alliance. And Force and Destiny, which is supposed to be focusing more on being Jedi, and Force wielders.
I have heard Star Wars Edge of the Empire.
I've only seen some of Edge of Empire played. Now, this one is Dawn of Rebellion, which can be used with all of them. And the thing is, it's supposed to be more period specific. So it's post Empire. So it's after Episode 3, before Episode 4. So this is supposed to be time period where things like Rogue One takes place. If you watch the animated show Star Wars Rebels, it takes place during this time. And it's supposed to focus on this part of the Empire securing their self, getting themselves established onto when they have the Death Star built. Hi, Damien. Streamcat says hi, everyone. And of course, it does great things like introduces new playable races, more planets you can visit, also other alien species you can visit, things like that, which are all good. I like how they're not limiting that you're just playing your generic kind of human characters too, because there's you see a lot of those other alien species, and they're kind of interesting to be able to play a bunch of them, which is good. So more options are always great. But I think the thing I really wanted to dive into this is that, generally speaking, the 3 Star Wars campaigns, yes, they feel like they're original trilogy specific a little bit, but technically speaking, they really aren't. Like Edge of the Empire, I could set it in any of those periods of time, from the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy to the new ones. You could probably do the same for Force and Destiny, and even Age of Rebellion. There's always some kind of problems, going on. Whether it's, the Rebel Alliance or whatever they're called in the current trilogy, because I'm forgetting right now. Because forgetful. But, and yes, we're taking an IP and we're making it into a game. So it's a little easier to put periods. But I think that's something that I feel like we need almost a little more of in some RPGs. As much as it's fun to do a good example, World of Darkness does a real great job. At least they did in the classic series. We had Vampire Dark Ages. I think they had Werewolf Dark Ages, Werewolf Western. I think they did one.
Now it's called in their new one they have a book called Dark Eras, which is the similar concept.
Yeah. But it was cool because it was very different, and it did a good job of showing us something completely different while being very similar to what we know.
Yeah, I mean, what for those, because you didn't really explain what Dark Eras or Dark Ages or whatever is its medieval period. It's how to play World of Darkness in a medieval setting.
Yes, the only one I really would be curious as to play would be at least in classic World of Darkness, the mage one, because mages have such problems with paradox in modern day because no one believes in magic. What if you're in an area where people believe in magic? What the heck does that mean for your powers? I think I've heard that Dark Ages mage is, like, actually much easier to play because you don't get dicked around so much. But anyway, that's digressing a little bit. So we are doing here, we're specifically putting a whole bunch of setting information for a period of time that there's a little bit of information from in this universe.
Okay, so Dark Eras, I was checking because I have the book, is a lot of different settings. So there is a, like, there's a 1600s, there's 1800s, there's, like, 1900s. They have a lot of old settings.
Cool. So they're basically giving you a lot of information for playing in the older settings. That's good. I like that.
Yep.
And that's the thing is, like, playing in a setting, in a specific time period kind of setting is very good. I think it helps a lot. And it adds, like, a level of, probably I would call it realism. Like, the World of Darkness presents it as, like, a shadow of our world. It's pretty easy to do. But with something like, yeah, Star Wars, sure, your game master could say, we're set in this time period, you know, and that could be done with any of these games, you know, but by at least having a setting book where you, like, here's some extra information you might want to know about playing in that period. I like that. I like when we get it that it feels as if it's the same setting but completely different. You know, that's what I'm trying to say, you know, it's like, it's the same thing to a degree, but we're putting it together, like, if I'm using something like D&D or Pathfinder, a lot of times if you look into, like, Forgotten Realms or Galarion on the Pathfinder side, they have information about this is the day and age kind of you're playing in. Well, interesting things happened in the past at these places. There were, like, old empires, all this stuff. What about playing in those? And having information
the one downside about Dark Eras that I'm looking at it is like, oh yeah, okay, so they seem to also focus on one specific or a couple specific splats for each era. So they don't give you everything for every splat, but
yeah,
I think you could generalize it though. I think it's, you know, you can mix things up. I think they're just trying to give you setting ideas,
which is not bad. Like, and I think that's why Dark Eras might have a slight advantage over the Dark Ages lines and such from classic World of Darkness, because it does give you a basis for a lot of different eras. So yes, I could, you know, play in the early 1900s, you know, it's like, oh, we can have a World War II adventure with vampires. What that kind of heck adventure would that be? You can come up with some crazy ones, you know? Allied vampires versus Nazi vampires? I like the thought that you're like, huh.
I'm just trying to think about, like, how would you do this?
It would have to be less of a direct war story and more like probably like a subterfuge kind of spy story or something, you know?
Yeah, but you could also do, like, and I'm also just, like, thinking, like, the secret battles with werewolves in like World War II and not against, like, Nazis and like their secret werewolf sector or something, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that would be very amusing.
Yeah,
but anyway.
Yes. I'm sure some of them got involved somewhere. You know, that's one of those things, is that when you have a big global conflict, you end up in a lot of interesting places, you know. But I think that's the same reason that, you know, I'm basically liking this book a lot as someone that is been interested in the Star Wars system, because I have heard its praises, and again, seen it played a little bit, but not played it myself. And this is the kind of variety I think is a good thing for Fantasy Flight. You know? This is a good direction for them. You know, like saying, like, here's some eras you can play in, or, you know, giving it some information. But so yeah, definitely this is an interesting one. And I would, if you like the Star Wars systems, any of the 3 campaign settings, which I do not know which I would play with or try to run. Probably would want to find someone to run it for me first, one of those things. Sometimes you want to play as a player on a new system, sometimes you want to just do it yourself. Can be either. But, alright. So, yeah, and I like how Fantasy Flight does talk about integrating this book into all 3 and how it works, So that's cool. So yeah, Dawn of Rebellion is available now. It's $40 from Fantasy Flight. That's not a bad price for a 144-page source book. Looks hardback to me, so yeah. right in the lines of all that normal stuff. All right, so I want to move on. I want to talk about, they have the Dark Crystal board game out now. Do you know Dark Crystal, Wyrm? I'm sure you do. Hopefully you do.
I know about it. I've never seen it.
Okay. So that's something I would definitely recommend you seeing, but that's besides the point.
No, I know it's good.
Yeah.
The big downside of, I know the ups and downs of it.
Okay.
Okay.
For those of you out there that, I'm sure there's a few of you who might be less familiar with Dark Crystal. It is a Jim Henson who did the Muppets. This is like a movie he did, and it's a quintessential one of his work. It shows off of it very well. It's a story about these this one little creature whose race is almost driven to extinction by another one, and has to go on a quest basically that ends up opposing them. It's he's a gelfling. And it's the Skeksis who are the bad. So it sounds like, from what I've read up on this one, it seems like you can do 2 to 4 players, and it seems like one side of the players are going to take 2 sides. One side is going to be gelflings, and the other looks like they're going to be Skeksis. So that's kind of interesting. It's a team semi-cooperative game, and it's based upon it. So you effectively have, I guess, your gelflings trying to stop the Skeksis, and the Skeksis trying to devour the essence of the gelflings.
Yeah.
I do like it comes with a set of polyhedral dice. They're you get a D4, D8, D6, D10, D12, D20. It's
so the thing about Dark Crystal that I know of is the movie itself is a little bit confusing and a bit underwhelming. Its puppet work is amazing.
Yes.
The way the visuals are incredible. It's all extremely detailed, but the plot is underwhelming because the guy, what'd you say, who was that?
Jim Henson.
Made it? Jim Henson. Because Jim Henson could not fit all he wanted to in the movie. To the fact that where they made, I think it's 6 basically graphic novels around this story, basically before, basically what came before and why things are as they are.
Oh yeah, I will agree that there is definitely their plot summaries are very quick and leave a lot to be desired. And the plot is incredibly simplistic, and I do feel there are points and times where the story gets pushed forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's sort of journey to this place, something happens which calls me to journey to that place. The usual with a lot of these storylines, saves the day, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it's also kind of a little bit of, the example I heard used when they were talking about this was, which crystal is the right one? I don't know. I know. Let me pull out this flute and play it to figure out which one's the right one. You're where did that come from? But in the graphic novels, they actually explain why she knows this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And stuff, it's kind of like he had a reason, but it looks very plot driving.
Yeah, I mean, there was another movie I heard someone talking about recently that had a lot of the same kind of stuff where it was I never really thought about it until someone was pointing it out, and then it's oh, yeah, Yeah, that makes sense. That's a very big plot hole. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was it that someone was
Anyway.
talking about? Oh my god.
But yeah.
The someone was talking about the horrible, like, Luke's plan at the beginning of Star Wars, the last one. Is that Return of the Jedi? The Jabba's Palace plan, which was terrible.
Yeah.
And someone was talking about how, like, this is the most awful plan ever, and 7-year-olds would have planned a better plan.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of problem in a movie that whatever reason what you're shooting and what you have to do has to be limited. And so you have to try to express in the best way, and I feel like, yes, the overall plot of it does take away a little. But that's... I don't want to digress too much when we want to talk about it a little bit. So,
but yeah, I also liked in that same thing that I watched about this movie, the guy talked about the plot holes and the graphic novels. Basically, I watched a review of this movie without actually seeing the movie, which is why I know so much about it. But it just, I don't know why, it just really caught me, but caught my attention. The funny thing, though, is I love this one scene where he's like, I have no idea how they even managed to make these puppets work. Because he's all like, he goes, like, you get the full body view of the puppet, it's moving its head, it's doing things, and it's like, its arms over here, it's, you know, how did they make this move? What is going on up here? I have no idea how they did this. And you basically had a bunch of, like, things like, how did they do this? What is this? Why did, you know, it's like, you know, probably there for support, you know, because his hand's like on a wall or something in the scene. And it was just hilarious the way he diagrammed like this one scene. And he's just like to show just how complicated this puppet work was.
Oh yeah, Jim Henson and his team were geniuses to say the least. You know, he really was a master of ridiculous puppet work. But
anyway.
yes, So
I
mean,
what is this game about anyway?
I think this game is effectively kind of what I was saying. It's like you have your Gelflings who are trying to basically fix the Dark Crystal. You know, sort of what's going on in the movie, where they're trying to like take a shard of the Dark Crystal to reunite it and restore balance to the world. And the Skeksis who only exist because of the disbalance of the world. You know, so they want to keep it. Because I think in the first 5 minutes they reveal that, you know, the Skeksis are like the dark side, and there's this other race of like moaning. I can't describe them. Cow people, who are like the light side. And
they're like both halves of the same or something like that.
Yeah, they're like both halves of the same being, and that they separated because the Dark Crystal basically broke. And the Skeksis are like, we like this better.
Yeah.
Screw balance. Go evil and darkness.
Yep.
You know, so I guess it's the Skeksis are trying to stop that. So I'm guessing you're not necessarily living out the storyline because you can have the Skeksis win, you know, and devour the essence of the Gelflings and, you know, like be like, haha, eternal as darkness, or as being able to exist.
Yep.
Woo. You know. And it seems like that's it, because unfortunately there's not as much information on the game as I would like.
Yeah, like that's the thing I was like looking. It's like, if it's like, here's the description. It's like, okay, description is just, oh, find the shard and heal the Dark Crystal. Find out fun board game, 2 to 4 players. And then it's all like box stuff, and then you go, okay, additional information, nothing.
Even Board Game Geek has like very little information on it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. So I mean, it does look like, yes, each of your characters has their own abilities. They got some special ability cards, you know, cool. You have the set of dice, so I have no idea how the heck you're going to use a full set of dice, but that's also cool. I'm sure different things call for different dice rolls. Whole bunch of different cards, a bunch of different game tokens, a very nice illustrated with artwork that is like very movie artwork, which is great. You know, that makes it feel more like, you know, you're playing your own version of the movie, which is always good. If you have a movie tie-in product that you're fitting with that, you know. But it's also, how much is that? Is that British pounds? God, the little L shape. I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, that's pounds.
So it's 40 pounds though. So that's like $55, I think. I mean, it's not terrible for a board game, and they do have plastic miniatures and a lot of stuff. So it's like I can't complain about the price necessarily from what you can see what's in the game. It does seem to have a lot of things.
Yeah, there's like a turn tracker, and
they call them highly collectible figurines of the main characters. It's like, are they really that collectible? They're part of a board game. I'm curious now as to how collectible they actually are.
and there's
interesting that this is the same.
like
You broke up there for a little second, Wyrm.
Okay, I'm back now.
Yeah. This is the same company that apparently brought us Labyrinth, the board game. So they like Jim Henson's products.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, it's interesting. If you liked Dark Crystal, you might like this board game. If you're interested in Dark Crystal, I would say watch the movie first and then play the board game anyway. Or if you really don't care for it, it might be an interesting team-based game for you to try out because it's semi-cooperative. Two teams, up to teams of two, and two of them. So, options, cool. But why don't we move on though? Because there's a couple more topics I do want to handle. I want to hit into Castell. An interesting card/board game.
Yeah.
So it's 2 to 4 players, 69 minutes to play. It has a lot, so it's actually more of a board game. Okay, so it's $60. It's more board game than anything. And the interesting thing about this is, like, when you hear it's like, it's all about the Castellonian tradition of human towers. Okay, cool. Which is, I guess, in festivals, people get on top of each other and try to get really, really high.
Yep.
But this year, this is what this focuses on as being a strategy game where it's not only are you trying to build a human tower, you're also trying to, like, expand your team, visit various cities, learn new skills, and then show it off at the thing. So it sounds like it's got, like, a lot more management aspects in something that sounds so simple.
Yeah, and you mentioned you mentioned something before, like you said it might have a Jenga aspect. I don't think it does. I actually think it's just a board game where you, like, place your things in the proper order.
Well, that's
other than
I kind of felt like when you talk about it initially, it's all about tower building. You know, you're like, oh, kind of like Jenga.
I thought there would be that too, but
like when you read up about it, it definitely kind of draws you away from that, and you're like, is there? Because I mean, you do have 150 castellers. That's quite a lot of castellers.
Yeah.
Oh, they're little, like, because they're little, like, square things you can use to stack people. It's got a lot of pieces to it. That's a good thing about it. You can get, like, prize tokens, local performance tiles, festival tiles, player aids, player skill tiles, board skill tiles. There's tons and tons of pieces to this game. I have to say that. Granted, there are not a lot of huge variety of pieces, but it's, like, enough of them overall. And you can check out the rulebook. Let me put this rulebook into here so I can at least state some stuff about it a little easier. So yeah, I think it's interesting because it takes an idea that sounds like you could come up with a very simple board game about it and comes up with something complex, or at least has a level of complexity to it, which I think in our day and age is something that most people want in a board game. Granted, you can always have, like, you have your simple board games, you know, your Sorries, your Clues, your Monopoly. Well, Monopoly not a little less, Clue a little less, but, like, things like Sorry, Trouble, that stuff is very, like, younger audiences. But, like, with the board games, people, like, you know, teenage above, they want something a little different. And I think, like, making something a little more complex than just it's a Jenga tower is a good thing. So it sounds like there's castellers per region, a skill wheel, festival calendar. Man, scheduling local performances, final steps.
It's like it's like a strategy game for stacking people, or it's a strategy game about people who want to stack
Yes.
into a large tower.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of entertaining, I have to say. You know, that's it's a very interesting thing about it, that it's like they made a relatively complex strategy game about that. And they do have like the rules for building towers too. So I guess you technically build a tower, but it's more like I have these tiles and I lay them out in a tower shape.
Yeah.
You know, using some basic rules, which is cool. And I guess it looks like there's actual balancing rules, so that if like you don't build your tower correctly, it doesn't work, which is interesting. So you know, and like local performance wants certain tower shapes. There's skill exhibitions. Festivals get scoring. So I'm guessing you score for going all these festivals, and whoever gets the most points wins. Classic kind of thing, you know. You probably have like, it probably has you draw like a number of festival cards or whatever to figure out how, like, you know, how many you get in the course of the game. I don't know, like, part of me would want to try this game because it seems interesting, but it's also like, it isn't the most interesting topic anyway. You know, like, I've seen stuff on those people that stack towers. I like saw one like Discovery Channel show on it, and I had enough at the time. I'm like, I'm not that interested in this. It's interesting to know that it exists, but after that, meh.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. You know, I like a good sort of management game, but is this the kind of thing I want to dive into?
Seems like it could be fun.
Yeah, that's one of those things about it. I think that's what keeps me from saying, like, nah, it's not my cup of tea. It's like, it seems like it could be fun and an interesting take on this. And maybe that's something that a lot of things can do to help out games. Find an interesting take on it that's a little different than what people expected. And that might be what gets your audience, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if it's going to go anywhere, it's going to be kind of more the idea of, gosh, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called, but it's like basically like those games which are about something, but their like mechanics don't entirely mean.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and there's a number of games like that, and I have an example in my brain. I just can't remember what it's called.
I feel at least like, yes, the mechanics of this game aren't 100% towards your stacking, but I feel like they're keeping it at a core aspect, you know, in a way, enough. And I think they're balancing that fine line. And I know what you're talking about, a game where it's like, oh, you would think it would be all about this, and it's sort of about that. It's sort of like not really. So I get where you're coming from when you're saying that, definitely. I feel like this one, at least, it does keep a core aspect of it that it makes sense in a way when you actually like read up on it, but it also, like, for a minute there I was like, you're not doing the obvious? No,
you're not, apparently.
No, we're going for something a little creative, and that's fine. Creativity. So, yeah, but Castell is available now. It is celebrating the vibrant tradition of people stacking on top of each other. If you ever felt like being a cheerleader to the extreme, maybe this is for you.
Yeah.
And you didn't actually
want a cheerleader wanting to take it to the next level.
You don't actually want to stack on top of someone. Extreme human pyramids. Alright. So, we did talk a little bit about, like, settings on the side of, like, settings when it came to something like time periods. I want to talk a little bit Achtung Cthulhu 0 Point Code of Honor. So, I think the 0 Point are a series of products. It's done by Modifius. I'm really terrible at like getting their actual company names so very often. Anyway, so Achtung Cthulhu, just a little introduction because again, not everyone knows about it. And I was talking about it a little bit at the start of the show. It's all about being in a World War II adventures, and the idea of it is that you are going against like these Nazi orders that are trying to basically raise Cthulhuian horrors. A weird sounding, but fairly actually simple quotations concept. You know, it's you're more on the Allied side going against Nazi Cthulhu lovers. I'm really trying to describe this terribly, so sorry about that. Nazi Cthulhu lovers. Yeah. And they have a lot of books all about that. They have things like the Eastern Front, the Pacific Front, the North Africa. Because it's really not Nazis, it's technically the Axis. You know, Axis powers, I guess it's really technically going against, you know. They have a lot of these 0 Point missions. Anyway, the latest one...
Very sad. Modifius's FAQ does not have, how do you pronounce your name?
I really want that. I think it's Modifius, but they have the like the line and the umlaut, so I'm like, how is it really pronounced?
Right? I was kind of like wondering if so this adventure
there, but this adventure here is focusing on 1942, so we're in the war, and it's focused on Istanbul, a neutral city filled with spies of every group that there can be, every nationality that's being basically, so it's cocktail bars, you know, polite smiles, going to they're going to tell you about like infamous places within the city where spies met, you know, from like the very fashionable ones to like the, you know, kind of dirty, dark places. And Turkey's staying out of the war, you know, but like the Führer's armies are like 100 miles away, and there's something terrifying underneath the street, because this is technically an adventure in the world, but it is giving us a location and sort of a different setting than your average Achtung Cthulhu game, because it's giving us rules for tradecraft and spycraft, you know, which is very interesting that in a game that's all about, you know, like a little bit of military anti-Cthulhuian horror, going spycraft route is actually something really interesting that they're doing with this adventure that I like a lot, because it's looking at the war at a different angle. And with this book, not only do you have the adventure, I feel like you could open up for having, if you're having your own adventures, more spycraft type adventures, you know, so like here's some rules for it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be fun. I mean, I really don't know much about the Cthulhu setting besides Cthulhu.
I know a little bit, and it's more from, like, I've seen a couple other things. I've played through Arkham Horror a bunch of times, so I have an idea of their names, but, like...
No, I mean, I get the gods and stuff, and the horror, and that kind of, and, like, the thing, but I've never actually seen the government military side.
Oh, God, yeah. And this is an interesting take on it with definitely, like, you know... like secret orders of Nazis trying to summon Cthulhu or his kin, you know, in order to defeat the Allies.
Okay, that's kind of fun. Yeah, so they're trying to. So it's like government's trying to control these things to win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they are pretty dangerous. So it's sort of like you're a group of allies that are like, oh, hey, you know, this seems like a bad idea for everyone. Why are you doing this? Let us please stop you, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and of course, a lot of these things, it's always like, that's the only thing I think I feel is a problem with this. Even like, I feel like with Call of Cthulhu, is the storylines are often very world-threatening, you know? It's like, if I fail, this thing will enter the world, and it may end. Because, like, they're supposed to be so terrible, you never get away from that. The elder gods and Cthulhu and his brethren. And, again, I think that's just a inherent problem with any Cthulhu-based game you're gonna do. Elder horrors suck. I mean,
yeah, and that's kind of the thing, is, like, you have to be smart about how you run it, and you have to start small, and, maybe never even really get that big. Like, you probably should never get to this Eldritch Horror is going to be released. No, you got to say, like, this, Shoggoth from the horror is going to be released if we don't stop this,
Yeah. And it's sort of like, we want to stop step A before they get to step D, Yeah. It's like, oh, this Shoggoth releasing will help them along their path to summoning it. If we can defeat the Shoggoth, we're stopping their plans ahead of time. Or like, oh, they're looking for an ancient artifact, or they're doing a ritual here, we have to interrupt. And I think that's what makes it a little better. I'm not sure how this adventure takes it, is the only thing. Because they do talk about, like, ancient evils and treasures below the city. So maybe you're just trying to, like, stop a century-old plan's in motion. It's like, okay, we're just sabotaging a plan. Let's not get to we're summoning the horrible thing, please. But
I mean, yeah, because, that's the other thing, too, is, like, there's also a little bit of a point where players are going to have weird ideas at that point as well. And then you get... But that can be fun, because then you get things like Old Man Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of Old Man Henderson?
By name, I don't know a lot about it.
I'm going to have to send you some links later.
Mm-hmm.
Greatest thing ever. Basically, he won Call of Cthulhu. He's the only person to ever win Call of Cthulhu.
Yes, I heard about that, but I've actually not heard about what happened and caused this.
Yeah, basically, he found a way to blow up an elder god.
Yes, you win Call of Cthulhu then.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Anyway, I'll send you some links later. It's pretty amazing.
Yes. Well, that's like with an Arkham Horror. You always want someone to play the gangster because they have a Tommy gun and dynamite to start. And we've always commented that, like, the dynamite's so useful, like, well, if an Elder God shows up, we could just use the dynamite on it. It's like... because the thing is, if it shows up, there's always rules for banishing it back. And, like, you have to do, usually something like, do so much damage. So, like, the dynamite is really helpful.
Yeah.
But beyond the adventure, which, again, it has a lot of those standard Cthulhuian horror tropes. I like the other details that are in this book a lot. And I like how it's, not only are we seeing, like with all a lot of the other Achtung Cthulhu products are like sections of the world that we're visiting. So yes, it's great that they have like map of Istanbul, a bunch of personalities that they give information on, it's the extra like, secrets grimoire stuff and mysteries, and then the tradecraft and spying, which I think are the real golden bit here. Like, for like Pathfinder games, you always think of standard adventuring, but there are intrigue games, which are fun on their own because they're nearly pure role-playing games. And there's also like war games, where maybe you're influencing a war, which has its own different rules, and complexities. And those are very different games. So adding these layers to an RPG, I really like.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you got to be very careful with intrigue games, because if you rely too heavily on dice, the players will eventually lose.
Yes. And that's another one thing here. This is definitely an intrigue adventure because it's dealing with a lot of the spying and stuff. So, yeah, when you're getting into stuff like that, you gotta be careful. But it can be very fun, though, definitely. It's, I think I've only had one game that really hit some intrigue really decently. I think so. So, unfortunately. I would love to have more. But
yeah.
No, I think this is an interesting one. If you like Achtung Cthulhu, or you maybe weren't on the entire World War II war aspect of it and like some intrigue, maybe you want to try this then, because again, it's It is World War II Cthulhu intrigue. Maybe that's for you. So. Anyway, so,
yep.
Why don't we move on from our normal, topics to our regular segments? Hurrah! It's that time of day. Let me put out the docket again. It is time for our Kickstarter Korner, of course. So, every week for our Kickstarter Korner, we basically choose like 1 or 2 Kickstarters a piece, talk about them, give some basic information, let you know why we're in particular interested in them and why you might be interested in them also. So, what do you have for us this week, Wyrm?
So, I have something a little bit more interesting. Mm-hmm. It is barely funded. It hasn't reached any of its stretch goals, but it's just something I find interesting. It is like coins for D&D, basically.
Okay.
Or fantasy gaming, it says. But basically, the point is so you have like physical currency to play around with in an RPG setting, is what I understand this to be. It could also be more conceptual and stuff, but it's a very interesting concept that I'm kind of almost curious. I almost wanted to discuss with you about what if you think this is like useful or a waste of time, or I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on this.
Ooh, the thing about this is, I think it could be useful in certain circumstances. I'm thinking this makes me feel more like it would be something for, let's say, a LARP. More than in a traditional RPG. I could see you using it in a traditional RPG for various things. Like, maybe like a good example would be if I'm playing 5th edition D&D. Maybe I'm using these coins as tokens for something like inspiration. You're like, here, you get a coin, you got some inspiration. Or come up with some other kind of similar system that like you use the coins for something special in a game. I think Pathfinder has their hero points system, where you can gain hero points, which are similar to inspiration. You could be like, you got a coin for it or something. Of course, then, yes, the LARP side is definitely obvious. It's like, I have physical coins that look awesome for a LARP. Not that I have, fortunately/unfortunate, I'm not sure which it is, played a lot of LARPs.
But, I mean, if you count what I did back before I knew what LARPing was as that, then yes, I technically have LARPed, but that was when I was rather young.
I've dabbled in it. I haven't gone to a formal LARP ever, I have to say.
No, I haven't either. I've been invited to one, but I didn't go.
Well, that's technically a lie. I did go to a formal LARP one time, but it was only because my one friend, who's most of the time our GM, wanted to go and didn't want to go alone. And it was up at a college to the north of me, and we were there for a little while, and then went and got late night breakfast at a diner. And that was the last time we went.
No, I actually don't think I was invited. I think I was just there when the person invited everyone around me except me.
See, like...
Which was really funny.
And the thing is, we didn't really, join it because we were just observing more than anything, Yeah. But it was a vampire LARP, so it was you had, obtenebration and, auspex. You had to,
Yeah. And I was, given... Yeah, because I was, given I was given the opportunity because I think everyone else around me was being asked if they wanted to come or invited. But then they never actually gave me any information on it, so... I was invited, but not really invited.
Obfuscate auspex, that's right. Or, and I had, I was, doing a weird thing of, obtenebration, of, doing... Not obtenebration. Or we came up with something really stupid of doing a lot of the hand symbols all together at once. Because it was me and Joe together there with our other friend. And I have done some experience with doing LARP-type things before then. That, again, were informal. Never any dress-up stuff, though. So... But no, coins like this would be awesome if you're doing it. And,
The one thing, though, I find is, I do like physical things. It's really cool.
Mhm.
But then you got to ask, how do you actually let the players keep their stuff, especially if you have multiple games and a limited number of coins? You can't let them just take it home. Then they might lose it or bring it back. You could hold on to it and give it out each time, and they could distribute their own money in that way. It'd be a fun way to keep track of gold, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it might be tedious as a GM or as a player to have to keep track of it.
Yeah, or like, I guess like if you really wanted to spend money on your group and you had the disposable income, you could just get a whole lot of them and hand them out. But I feel like there's never enough of them, apparently, for you really to use it too directly, unless you have like, you use them like, this one represents this much money, this one represents that much money.
Well, of course you do that. I wasn't even saying, like, not that. No, honestly, in my mind, it was like you probably have things above a platinum just to keep things simple. In fact, I think they offer, how many types of currency? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At least 5. Or they have different sets. So there's like, but so you can get a lot of different ones. So, but yeah, so it's like, there's the base 4 types, and then you've got some other sets which are different, and then you've got the elemental ones which are different, forgotten creatures which are different.
They have some very interesting ones, definitely.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, there's a lot of options if you really needed it. So it's kind of like, you have enough if types to kind of really subdivide things if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
To keep it from like getting too crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So that's
it's just an interesting thing.
That's
good for LARPs.
It's hard to say exactly what else, but I definitely can see options for it. Even just in normal role-playing games, it's just you're gonna have to figure it out. And yeah, I agree with you. Having something like physical is really cool in front of you if you can have it. It's like, as much as I enjoy the fact I have a huge pile of miniatures, and like when you set up a board, I can have miniatures on it in real life, they don't usually quite match the characters, Yeah. They're always just sort of matching them, and then it's sort of like, if you get that one, which is like, if you get like a custom miniature that would match your character, that'd be awesome. It'd be really expensive, but it'd be awesome.
There is a website for that.
I know, I've seen them before, and I guess they're not, I remember I looked at, they're not that expensive, but it's still pricey, but yes, you could definitely, they can take art and make it into a miniature for you.
No, even better, what is this website called? Where is it? I know I have it here. It's basically, it's a very cool looking website where you literally can just design your own miniature and have them send it to you.
Cool.
I have it somewhere. I'll look for it later.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So, as for me, I did want to give a couple of shout-outs beforehand, especially since we don't have Joe here. First shout-out I want to give is Devil's Run. For Savage Worlds and 2D20 systems, it's basically Mad Max the RPG. It is actually the second time it's been up on Kickstarter, and this time it's funded. First time, I don't think it got funded. Sucks for them. This time, they managed to get the funding they need. Cool. But if you want to do, like, again, Mad Max, the RPG, a little bit, that's what this is all about. It's, getting on your vehicles, driving the Route 66 high-octane and post-apocalyptic, George Miller world. Carnage, destruction, on vehicle ways, Hell's Highway. Yeah! And that's kind of what it is. So I thought it was definitely a cool one to check out. And they are funded. Another one I wanted to kind of give a shout out to is Edge of Darkness by AIG. It's a worker placement threat system variable location game is the easiest way to describe it. It deals with basically being groups of characters protecting a city from various problems. I think so it's funded. You can learn more about it. It's a big one. 60 to 120 minutes, 2 to 4 players. You're taking your role of powerful guild, basically struggling against great evil that could cause harm to the city, trying to overcome it, fix it, keep things good. So it's things like a card crafting system, group deck building with one shared deck, and worker placement, and other things like that. So it's got a lot of complexity to it, and that's why I think it's interesting, and they have definitely funded themselves by a lot. So they got a lot of stretch goals. So that's one I would definitely recommend checking out, those two also, especially since Joe's not here. But the one I wanted to say, which I think is interesting, is a 1 to 3 player game, Donning the Purple. Because it's all about ruling the Roman Empire. Basically, I think it's supposed to really be post-Caesar, where he's been assassinated, and, you know, you're taking the role of Emperor of Caesar, of Rome, when it's falling, basically, in the 193 AD, I think is the year. Let me see. Yes, 193. So you got, like, enemies crossing the border, political intrigue, and you're taking the role of the new emperor. But the other groups, kind of the other families, can basically backstab you at any moment if they feel like you're failing and replace you. So it's like you have to manage to basically make them happy while maintaining the empire. So it's a complex game, but it looks kind of cool. And I like the political intrigue about it. And we don't see a lot of, like, Roman-era games.
Link it.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Let me link it. Sorry about that. Almost forgot to. It's got 19 days to go. It is funded. It's approaching that 200% mark. For $6, you get a print-and-play version of it. And for $50, you get a copy of the game and all the stretch goals. Let's see here. You can actually pick it up in Norway if you want free shipping. They have an option for that. If you're in Norway, you can go get it from them. That's just an interesting one. Yeah. You can get your face on the game for 128. They're no longer available.
It's probably because they're in Norway. Norway probably has some sort of thing for shipping within itself that's not that bad.
Yeah. So, like, if you guys are sort of stop by and pick it up, we can say hi also. So you deal with things like enemies, getting grain, drawing cards, player actions, placing buildings, distributing the food, collecting taxes, and go through years. And the Emperor receives victory points according to the happiness tracker. But you can get replaced.
It says age 14 and up, but for a second I thought 14 plus players.
No, apparently it's for like 1 to 3 players.
I know, I see that. I'm like, because it was right next to it, and I was just like, I read it wrong.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Funny though.
The great thing,
how?
The great thing I like here is on the Kickstarter they link it that you could play it on Tabletop Simulator.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
See, more games need to do that. I don't think people realize that, like, there are so many games I want to get because I played them with you guys on Tabletop Sim.
Yeah. No, there are some great games that I would like to play physically with people more. Like, Tabletop Sim's fun, but there's a disconnect a little bit, and there's, like, a complexity on the game board that makes it not as diving into it. Like, I would love to try the Other Time Stories again with a couple other players, so, like, we have other people lead us, you know? Because, like, me and Joe played through the first adventure before, and then we played through again and won it. But the thing is, we still played through a couple of times because we were like, oh, where do you guys want to go? We're not going to give any major hints. We might know a few things, but we'll, like, you know, sort of explore on our own here, but we'll kind of, like, have you take the lead.
Oh, so you actually had played that first one before, the zombie one?
No, there's one before there. It's all about going to it. That's in the core box. It's all about going to an insane asylum and dealing with, like, a cult summoning a Cthulhuan horror.
Mm.
Yeah. In the basement, basically, and sacrificing people to it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, no. I like how they have the tabletop similar. I like how they have, like, rules you can print and play. You know, they've got the PDF of rules you can grab. So it's they're doing all the right things to attract people to support for it. Is another thing, and I think that the number of players is what interests me. I'm assuming that you're playing a little bit against the board for single player, but I'm assuming that when you're getting like the 3 players, everyone's stretching to become the emperor kind of thing and get rid of you.
Yeah.
You know.
And yeah, and when it comes to like the whole tabletop sim thing, there's one thing companies don't understand, and that's people who pirate. Like when you say, "Oh, this many copies are lost to piracy," for the most part, not so much with music. Music has a culture that's really kind of crushed it, but for things like video games or like even like board games like this, the culture is actually there's very few people who pirate who would have bought your game if it was unavailable to pirate. Mm-hmm. There's a very small group of people, because generally people pirate because they don't have the money.
Yes, I will agree. That's definitely one of those things, is if you don't have the money, you're generally going to find ways to do things. If you have the money, you oftentimes want to spend it on stuff,
Yep.
And there's definitely plenty of awesome board games I would love to get out there if I had a lot of extra money.
Yep. Anyway, that's just kind of something that's like, that's why I love that this game is like, no, we're just going to throw it out there. And that's basically what Minecraft did as well. Like, Minecraft was like, yeah, we don't care if you pirate us. Buy the game if you want, but we don't care.
Yeah.
Because like so many people play pirate, and like they're one of the biggest games ever. They didn't restrict YouTube, they didn't restrict piracy, they didn't restrict anything. No. They just let it go, and it was a good game, so it sold.
Yeah, they played it smart, basically. They had good ideas, and that's the thing, is this is a good case of them playing it smart. So
yeah. Sorry, I just like it when companies do that, or when people do that, because it's like, it always annoys me when people go like, oh no, we have to do this thing this very specific way, or else people will pirate, and the game's pirated like the day it comes out.
No, I think that's one of those things, is like, I've heard people recently talk about, like especially the video games, like the anti-piracy software, which only screws up video games and doesn't stop actual people that would want to pirate it, because they can still hack through it.
Yep.
I think like someone was saying, well, a little off topic, but but yes.
Oh, we can go off topic.
Well, I mean, like that, like someone had said, like one of the more powerful anti-piracy softwares that like it lasted like 6 months before they crushed it, and now it doesn't work anymore. So it held out 6 months. Now people will pirate it a lot. Those same people weren't gonna buy it anyway.
Yep. I mean, they put in that much effort. If people put in that much effort to crack it, they're not gonna buy the game. They clearly don't want to spend the money on the game because they're willing to put in 6 months to crack it. Well,
I think it's
and those people aren't the people who necessarily pirate, but I'm saying there are people who are willing to put 6 months of their life into something so they don't have to buy a game. You really think they're gonna buy a game without, if they didn't have that opportunity? I mean, probably not.
No, and I think the fact is, like, as soon as you put something like this in front of people and are like, no one can pirate it because of this, they're like, up yours, we're gonna do it.
That reminds me of another game, which did something really smart. It was, what was it called? Game Company Tycoon or something like that. Oh. It was basically like you're doing a game company. And they specifically, when the game was released, uploaded their own copy onto Pirate Bay or whatever. But they actually had one specific difference in that if you did that, if you got that one, the company would have piracy issues, and people were actually going to Pirate Bay who had bought the game to get it because they wanted the extra challenge of having to face rampant piracy in of your games.
Yep. Cool.
There's just kind of a funny thing where I'm like, that's funny, because it's like it's almost like hard mode.
Look, you're gonna do this. We're gonna troll you a little bit. Enjoy.
Yeah. It was more of a troll, but it turned out funny enough, actually getting some attention, and people liked it.
Cool. All right, but that's Dawning the Purple. I found it was a very interesting one. Definitely a little different take on some various board game things you can have. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
All right, why don't we move segments, because it's time for another one of our weekly segments, our Week in Tabletop, where we tell you, well, what we did in the course of the week. So, Wyrm, why don't we start with you, because we don't have Joe here to share anything with us.
Yeah, and, I mean, we didn't do Bessim this week, so that's not a thing. I didn't do my other game this week because for the last 2 weeks, people haven't been able to make it. And one of them had a wedding to go to, the other one had like a skiing trip the next weekend. So I'll just go over Monday. We played Time Stories. Well, first we played a round of Couriers, which was it you or Joe that got extremely lucky?
I got extremely lucky. Look,
yeah, you got extremely lucky, and you just kind of walked all over us.
Well, I feel like I got out to a really big lead very quickly.
Yeah, when you start with the ability to purchase the top tier creature, it's really hard. Like it's so rare that happens, but it does happen from time to time, and I have noticed that when that happens, you tend to get a lead.
Yep. And
which is very hard to catch up.
It was definitely enough for me to push forward and get the win then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we did Time Stories, Prophecy of Dragons.
Mm-hmm. And that was fun. I played the wizard guy. We figured out kind of what to do for the next time. Hopefully we can beat it this Monday.
I think when you play through, like, Time Stories, unfortunately, like, the Marcy Files, I think I've heard from people that it was a little more difficult. We needed a couple of playthroughs of it almost to, like, get an idea of everything. This one, we pretty much chugged out. Well, I think we also got a little lucky that we kept getting, like, efficient at everywhere we visited. So we didn't lose a lot of extra time, you know?
Yeah.
And so we managed to get through a lot of things and get to the end pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, like we didn't lose turns too much from combat. We actually got pretty lucky in the combat sense. Because I remember in the Marcy Files, combat was so much more difficult because there was also a lot more combat, I think.
Yeah.
Which I think was actually almost why it was so difficult, because you'd spend several turns fighting things. Whereas in this one, it's like, maybe 2 turns, you know, if we're fighting something, even like a big fight.
Yeah. And I feel like we have better combat capabilities, even though it's not a combat focus in a way, too.
Well, it's funny because if anything, it's because it's so much more combat focused. Because the focus is on, you have, like, everyone specializes in some form of combat, whether it's magic, melee, ranged, that you could figure out what to do. Whereas the other one, the numbers were a lot lower from what I remember. Mm-hmm. It was a lot grittier and harder because it was a zombie game. You know, it was a zombie quest. You know, it was kind of like, well, you know, I'm a guy with a bat, not a wizard shooting spells and a ranger with a bow, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the things I really like about the Time Stories is they're very similar, but there's, like, always a very good different feel between them. Like, it definitely made you feel like it was a gritty zombie adventure, and this one definitely has a very big, like, fantasy, you know, like, exploring the city kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
But hopefully, yes, we'll be able to finish it up this Monday, get that rocked out, and win the day.
Yeah. Woo.
Then, of course, we had Bastion Frontier. Yep, where we had kind of, I guess you could call it a intermission a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I wasn't, I had more planned. It's just that I let you guys, you know, kind of meander around a little bit more, and ended up working out.
We did a lot of, like, role-playing-y things, you know, which was important for setup for the future, you know? And I feel that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, we got a lot of the, you know, side story stuff for all our characters. A bunch of it done. It was fun.
And it tied into the main stuff a little bit.
Yeah. Like, we did, like, you know, meet up with Bastion. We arranged to have a dinner at some point in time. We all hung out at the bar and got really drunk, except for Shadow. I think he's the only one that didn't get drunk.
Yeah. I don't know what he wants out of me as a GM with his, I'll be honest, I don't know what he wants with the companion or whatever, the rival, because I'm like, I made a rival. It's like, yeah, but you made her kind of political. I'm like, Yeah, you don't like that, so clearly that's a rival.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, we'll see how it goes, though. I'll talk to him a little bit more about what he wants. I think I misunderstood some things, so it's like I'll have to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of left a lot up to me, so I'm like, okay, I'll take some liberties, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happens. So,
Yep.
I think for myself, the only other thing I did, I did do a couple of games at the diner over last Saturday. I think we did Dragonfire, where we actually managed to almost play through an adventure of it, but we still sucked at it. There's something about Dragonfire which I don't know. I think we got unlucky, and that's why we lost. But it almost feels like the game wants to be played as a campaign, because we've played, like, other than the basic intro adventure, which is on, like, the quick start rules, we have lost twice to the game. So, meh? It's like super brutal D&D. I don't know. It is fun, but, you know, it's sort of like, at least in Arkham Horror, I feel like I've won before more than this. So, just saying. And that's Arkham Horror, where you might all lose anyway. I at least felt like I had more of a chance in the middle of it sometimes. Anyway. I think we did a little bit of High Noon Saloon then, too. Joe's tiniest board game ever. He's such a giant guy, and he owns this really tiny, like, Western saloon board game. And it's, like, so silly to see him play it. But, like,
funny.
Yeah, I know. Where it's, like, a saloon bar fight, and you're supposed to beat each other up. Anyway, I guess that's it for our week in tabletop. I don't think I've got anything else I did at all. Nope.
No, it was a pretty slow week.
Yeah, didn't have Thursday, didn't have anything on Tuesday, have yet to organize.
You've been having some inclement weather problems. I've been having a lot of cancellation problems.
Yeah, well, it's like yesterday, I was sitting here playing, you know, Enter the Gungeon, and I like saw my power flickering in a bit. I'm like, what is that? Is someone doing something? And I'm like, then I hear it's like, it's a little windy. I like, you know, listen into my ear, like, oh, and I look outside, and it's like a blizzard blowing behind my window. You know, it's like, when the heck did that happen?
Yeah, it's actually been really rainy weather here as well, which might be why my internet was flickering. Mine needs just to reset though as well.
Anyway, all right. So now we're moving into our final segment of the day, Consult the Table, where you out there in the world can give us a question somehow. Anything related to tabletop, related to one of these topics, related to something else, and we will answer it to the best of our abilities. If you're
probably also be willing to do video games and or streaming related questions.
Or, you know, if you just have some kind of question that you want us to talk about, because we do have a lot of nerdy side tangents, that works too.
Basically, keep it nerdy.
If you have some kind of nerdy question to ask us, we are willing to answer it to help you out in some kind of way. Whether you are live with us in chat and want to ask it, whether you want to leave it in the comments of when I put this up on YouTube, whether you want to email us at discussingtabletop@yahoo.com, which I still have open, whether you want to go on my Discord and check in with me, or
my Discord, or my Twitter,
or Joe's Twitter, or my Twitter. Yes, there are lots of places you can reach us with questions that we are all but willing to, or we are very willing to answer and help you out with. So if you have something, send us something.
I think you need to start throwing questions, like saying, hey people, I want questions for things.
I probably should start like saying it in like, I could probably send it in my Discord, but I could probably also send it like in like False Pretenses Discord.
Yeah, like that's what I'm thinking, like False Pretenses or the other nerdy Discords I'm a part of, like it might be good to kind of actually try and, like, even if the people aren't going to be there, just like, hey, I need some questions for this thing I'm doing. There's not enough people as questions. We've gotten a couple, and I really love the ones we've gotten, but
yeah, it's like, and as talking about like how long it's taken us to get to like a couple. I don't know. It's been fun, but it would be nice to get some more. Anyway, so I think that's it for today, though. thank you all, everyone who's joined us live. Thank for everyone who's going to tune into this when it's up on my YouTube channel, or who's going to check it out on the Twitch afterwards. VOD. Yeah, Twitch VOD. I kind of suggest checking out my YouTube VOD. It does support me more, but if you want to do it Twitch VOD, that's all you have, that's fine too. Why don't we have Wyrm? You give some information about yourself.
I am Diamond Wyrm, at Diamond Wyrm on Twitter. You can find me on my channel, twitch.tv/DiamondWyrm, where I stream many days at 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Pacific Daylight Time. No, wait. I always forget how that goes. I think it's Standard Time, and I think it switches to Daylight Time. Or is it always Daylight Time if you're Daylight Savings, then it switches back, and that time switches. Anyway, just Pacific Time. Let's just go with Pacific Time. Anyway, that's always a question I have. I need to look that up, because it's something I should know for my job.
Yes. I think it's Pacific Standard Time, because I'm Eastern Standard Time, Central Standard.
I've also heard Pacific Daylight Time, which I think it switches to when you switch to Daylight Savings Time, but I'm not certain.
Okay, that might be.
Like it actually switches when it is, and it's like I need to look into that. But generally, Pacific Time is 4 o'clock Pacific Time is usually when I stream. I should be streaming later today. I'm hopefully. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Cool. As for myself, I am Dracovin, your host here. I also will be streaming tomorrow morning for the morning stream. I stream daily. I'll probably be doing some Civilization 6. One of these days, I'll grab some people for some multiplayer in the morning. One of these days. Join me. We'll find out.
I'm up.
Well, if you want to get... I have a copy of Civ 6 still, if you want to actually try and play it.
Oh, thank you. I don't like grand strategy games.
That's fine. I've yet to find someone to give that to. I still have that. I got to give it to someone. I'll figure it out. Maybe I can get Blaze to do it. He's up in the mornings too.
That is the one game I will say no to. But if you ever want to do something else in the morning, I'm down.
Well, yeah, I probably will eventually start doing some other stuff on some Sunday mornings. But anyway, you can also find me at my YouTube channel, where I have all the VODs, VODs of whatever I do here on Twitch go up there, plus some scripted content, which is educational stuff on playing and role-playing games, learning about stuff from CCGs, stuff like that. A lot of different things up there on that side, too. You can always find me at my Twitter, my Discord, both linked below. For more support, you can always subscribe on YouTube. Please subscribe on YouTube. It helps me out a lot. I want to get back to 1,000 subscribers. Please also follow here on Twitch. Also, subscribing here on Twitch really helps a lot, which subscribing on Twitch would help Wyrm too. Also, both of us have a Patreon. Mine has definitely some great rewards. Wyrm's does too. There's a lot of ways that you can support us, give us some great, help us out, make us, better at giving you content out there and things like that. So, thank you all of you who came out and joined us live. Thank you everyone who's going to watch this on the VOD. We'll be back next week, and hopefully Joe will be returning to us. He theoretically should, unless something weird happens. He should be back. I mean, power outage is terrible, but anyway. And there'll be plenty of more interesting tabletop news to discuss. So, thank you once again, and we shall see you later. Goodbye, everyone. So long.
Bye.